Welcome to Bad Law, Worst Facts. My name is Michael Takla. Today I got Teddy back on the show. He just got a huge settlement on a case that, honestly, I don't know how you came up with the damage model. I think liability was an issue, but the damage model was crazy. But you got to tell me about this case.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for having me back on the show, man. I always like to be on Bad Law and Worst Facts, just so long as I'm not making that bad law, just dealing with the worst facts. But really interesting case, man, and it was a pleasure to work with this family. And the real challenge of this case, there were some liability issues, but it was how do we figure out how to represent the 26 years and the relationships that my client had developed over the course of a career in the National Basketball Association, the NBA, scouting rather for the Houston Rockets. And so that was the real challenge of this case. And I'm happy to come on the show and share with you how I developed a pretty substantial damage model to represent what this guy had done and what he would have done had he not been involved in this tragic accident.
So what are the facts of it? What are we talking about here? Who are you suing? What happened? You gotta tell me a little bit about the facts of it.
Well, rather than tell you, Mike, why don't I just show you?
All right, what are we looking at here?
So this is going to be about 10 minutes after this accident happens. Okay.
All right, and this is a police cam?
This is going to be dash cam footage coming up, and this happened in South Houston. What you're looking at is a stretch of roadway. There was a roadway widening project going on by one of the largest construction companies in the world. And you're looking at the perspective of my client, again, about 10 minutes after the accident happens. So this is the same route he would have taken, his exact same perspective. And so he's traveling along. He's heading westbound. He's heading home. He'd been in Pearland earlier in the day. He was an avid bicyclist, about 65 years old, loved to ride. It was one of the ways he trained. He came up here, new construction. He didn't want to go over the overpass, so he decided to turn onto this newly constructed road. He's in the laneway. Our theory was he doesn't want to be in the laneway. That's unsafe. And so he makes the prudent decision to get behind those barrels, but rather than be behind the barrels, he decided to get on the sidewalk. He encountered that A-frame, but what he didn't realize, what was unmarked and unwarned of for him, was that there was a 10-foot long drainage condition called an armor curb sitting directly behind that A-frame, effectively a bear trap in the middle of the sidewalk. It caught the front wheel of his bike, pitched him over his handlebars, and the good man broke his neck and died. So that's where we start. That's the basic facts.
So, before we get into liability, tell me about this guy, right? Because you had a little bit of what I would consider a damage issue, right? You've got a guy who's making 130 in scouts in the NBA.
The biggest problem, and it wasn't a problem, it was just an issue of how do you properly show the quality of this person and who he was, what he could do in the league. So B.J. Johnson, who you're looking at here, was a 26-year member of the Houston Rockets. He had played some college basketball and played semi-professional basketball. He joined up with the Rockets in 94, 95, I think for the second of their championship runs, and he got the ring. But he'd stayed with the team, and he'd been a scout. Now, everyone we talked to said, look, as a scout, that doesn't fully capture his skill, his expertise, or his relationships in the game of basketball.
Right.
But me as the lawyer, all I've got to work with is an earning statement,
right,
and a contract that says he was a scout getting paid about $130,000 a year.
So you're what you're telling me is, you look at it like any other case, right? You're thinking salary. Okay, let me get an economist to tell me how much you would have made, and then build a plan that way. But you're saying, look, that's not what you can do here.
How could I possibly give the truthful telling of this person's story and who he represented in the NBA and across the world of basketball if I didn't include all of what he could have been, which is what we do with every client who's involved in a death case or has a significant or serious injury? It's what can you do? What is your human potential? What is all of our human potentials? And the telling of this man's life was not only that a scout is a minimal position. It's significant. But what else could he have done and received significant remuneration for in the game of basketball, given his knowledge, skill, and expertise? And so me as the trial lawyer, I need to figure out a strategy and build a body of evidence and build a model that is going to be able to explain and put substance and body to what this man was and what his skills portended to over the next 10 years in the NBA. Now, we had some other problems. I just want to just jump aside. I mean, he had some health concerns. He'd never been offered formally an assistant coaching position. But the NBA is an informal world. So how do I get around that? And how do I show effectively the jurors and the insurance carrier and that construction company, this is what this man could have done had his life not been taken?
So you've got a 65-year-old with some health concerns, and you have got to jump into the business of the NBA, which, I mean, you said it's not linear, right? And figure this all out, right? I mean, how do you put that all together?
Well, the first thing you do is you find somebody that knows something about the NBA. Thankfully, when you got a guy who's got a 26-year career in the NBA, his family's pretty well entrenched, and they know some people that you can talk to.
Yeah.
So when you've got access to Daryl Morey, you've got access to the GM of the Houston Rockets, Raphael Stone, when you can talk to a former counsel of the Players Association in the NBA, you've got some people that you can rely on for expertise and some information to guide you in the right point. So that's the first thing I did. I said, hey, first of all, who is this guy and what could he have done? I mean, tell me about him. And they go, he's incredible. I mean, he's incredible. He could have done whatever he wanted. His relationships are almost uncalculable how important they were and how much they mean to people in the NBA and what he could have done with them.
Yeah.
Well, that gets the mind spinning. Okay, I need to go talk to some people to verify this and to build it up. So the first thing we do is we talk to identify somebody that I think can actually function as an expert to do a forensic analysis of his potential in the NBA. That's step one.
Okay.
You got to find an expert who can talk about this kind of stuff. So you got to find somebody.
Yeah.
And I will say this: one of the great things about working for the firm that I work for is we have access to wonderful experts who can actually guide us in the direction of other experts. And so our economist in this case is actually the same guy who worked on the evaluation for the estate of Kobe Bryant. And so he had some really good insight as to how he thought to develop this model initially. So I said, okay, you know what you're doing.
That's the guy to talk to.
You know how to work these things up, big man. I'm going to listen to you on this one. And so he said, look, here's what I think we can do, because I've been in this position where I dealt with some of these celebrity cases and I treated this as a celebrity case. And he said, you need to go find somebody who can really work this up. So we did. We identified a guy named Hal Villegas who worked at two of the largest agencies in sports, XL and I think Wasserman, and was also, like I said, I think associate counsel for the NBA Players Association. I had acted as an agent, like I said, and then had transitioned to some other roles. And he has a JD and was an adjunct at both the UCLA School of Law and the Miami School of Law. So that was step one.
Yeah.
But after that, you got to go find some people.
So, part of this podcast is giving young lawyers the idea, right? And having them realize, the world's our oyster, right? What I mean by that is logistics, right? How do you get someone who is just a scout and evaluate him as a coach? And that's what you did, right? You took the deposition of the LA Lakers coach, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, we were lucky because he became the head coach of the LA Lakers during the pendency of this case. So, look, we were extremely fortuitous, and you make a good point, man. I think amateurs talk tactics, experts talk logistics.
Yeah, absolutely.
The idea is for those young lawyers listening is you need to go and develop that evidence and find that evidence, and then figure out a way to make sure it's packaged appropriately and then presented effectively. Because our jobs is to be persuasive to 12 people sitting in a box here in Texas. I mean, that's what we do.
Yeah. Learn the rules of evidence and then start digging and making sure you can put it within the rules of evidence. Yeah.
That's exactly right. So where we started, we identified some people within the league who we thought would give good testimony and could help establish the potential of this credible 65-year-old man who is a 26-year scout in the NBA. Again,
well, look, we got YouTube. We put this podcast on YouTube for a reason, right? We're talking about creative depos today. So we're going to talk about damages. I want to see some of the depos you took. Talk about damages. And then I want to talk about liability because you did some things that really raised my blood pressure when you told me about them. So let's talk about the damages deposition.
So the very first damage deposition that we took was the GM of the Houston Rockets, who really established the foundation for some of the baseline documents that we wanted to use and to establish really who this guy was, meaning my client, and who he could be. And the guy was fantastic. Before I give you some examples of some other things that we did, I will say that we weaved in some creative visuals even at that early stage because I knew it would be very difficult to get these guys live at trial. It just would be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's not going to happen.
How am I going to get these guys in the NBA to show up and come into Houston? Happen. You got the NBA Summer League, you got a million other things going on. I mean, I knew that.
They're a little busy.
Exactly. So I got one shot. I got one shot with all these guys, and I know that going into every single one.
So going into every single deposition, you're thinking, I not only need to get this testimony that's going to help my case, but I need to have it visually, sexy, right? I need
trial depo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every single one's a trial depo. Every single one's getting play for the jury. Now, I know, and everybody out there should know who's watching this, that one of the benefits of taking a depo and having it be video recorded is you can cut and splice a little bit so long as question and answer is consistent.
Right.
If you keep that integrity, you can kind of reformat it to fit the way that you want. And I've seen that done brilliantly from time to time.
Right.
But it's not that true detective one take sexy shot that's going to put you over the edge and really put fear into the hearts of these insurance companies.
Okay.
So my goal was to go into each one of these depots and get really clean, visually compelling trial depositions from these witnesses. And so we developed a strategy. I worked with graphic artists that we have to do some things like what I've got right here. And so
this is being shown during the deposition.
So what I do, yeah, that's right. So what I do is I'll lay a very brief predicate before I build into the body of a deposition. This is the graphic that I developed for one of our witnesses, who's Lloyd Pierce. He was a 3-year head coach for the Atlanta Hawks and was serving as the lead assistant for the time of the Indiana Pacers. Okay. And so what I do is I show the graphic, I introduce who he is, and this is after I already introduced the exhibit because I don't want to do it during the course of the deposition because I want a clean one-take cut.
Right.
Then as I play it, I'll allow the opportunity for the witness to expand on the deposition and to give me some additional testimony on top of it, depending on what he sees, whatever he's thinking. But what we do is we provide something almost like an ESPN feature while the witness is giving his testimony. And mind you, you still need to prove this up and you still need to make sure it works in the context of your deposition. And so for me, what I do is either at the beginning or at the end, you say, now, I've shown an exhibit throughout the course of your deposition. Is it fair of me to say that that's a fair and accurate representation of your background? Yes, it is. You think it would assist the jury in understanding who you are and what your course was through the MBA and the positions you held? Yes, I do. Well, all right. Well, at that point, it becomes a demonstrative that's useful, the telling of the witness's testimony. And it makes for a much more visually compelling and interesting deposition for 12 people who, for the most part, still feel like a hostage from getting cattle called in and sitting with 45 to 60 other people while you gap out for no reason.
Yeah.
So that was step one. That's kind of where we went through, or where I started at least in the course of this case.
And I'll tell you, you're talking, I'm listening to you, but I'm so focused on what you just showed me, and I'm like, man, this is a great dude. This is a great dude.
Dude, this stuff is so strong. I mean, these visuals are so strong. And the guys who know this, and guys and girls, but the cognitive science behind developing a visual and presenting a visual to people,
right.
Both from the learning perspective, the engagement, and the credibility perspective.
Right.
I mean, you're hitting them on 3 different fronts. And it's our job as lawyers, as young lawyers and lawyers of any age, we're here to persuade. We're here to be compelling. We're here to enhance the testimony and develop the points that we need to develop to get the verdicts we need to get.
Right.
And so these are some techniques that I worked on in this case, which we were able to turn in 18 months on a massive construction case involving a pretty complicated damage model, which I'm really proud of.
And just for the viewers, 18 months and how many depositions?
Like 22.
Yeah, that's lightning fast. It's pretty fast.
And we could talk about some of the moves on the sort of procedural side as well, because we're talking about a motion preferential trial setting, and I tried to use the narrow gap that I had for the NBA to fit and get into a preferential slot. So just as an aside, before we keep going with these deposition topics, though, but there's like a really small window. So the draft happens in the NBA. You got summer league and free agency start.
Right.
Then it's dead, and then you get back to training camp.
Yeah.
So I had July 18th. I was going to trial at the time that we record this.
Right.
It was going to be next Monday.
Oh my
It's
God.
a Friday. I was going to start Monday.
Well, sounds like you've got Monday free now, huh?
Yeah, my Monday got free real quick. And dude, I had to fight like hell to keep that trial setting too, because they tried to pull some shenanigans and get in some late after the line discovery practice. They filed a motion to stay, an emergency motion to stay in the Court of Appeals. They filed a petition for writ of mandamus, and it was a lot of work by our team to make sure that we held that trial setting, because the only way that you're going to get an outcome and get a settlement on a case like this and develop real value in these cases is you can hold their feet to the fire and get that trial setting.
Absolutely. Till then, I'll talk to the adjuster or whoever later at some point in time. I got other things to deal with.
No, they don't want to pay out that money either. I mean, the insurance company, they don't believe the risk deadline.
Or they have that money, but they're saying, "Oh, we'll wait till Q4, later on." I don't want to take a ding now.
Yeah, why not? It makes money for me. Why keep it?
Exactly.
So I took a series of depositions like that after about 10 liability depositions, because until you get those liability depositions sealed, I mean, we didn't really know what we had. But you were
terrifying them during the liability, right? I mean, let's get into that now. I think it's a good point. Okay. Because like I said, and I was saying it earlier, it raised my blood pressure that you were making exhibits in the middle of the deposition. So, talk to me about that. What was going on there?
Why does that get you going, Mike?
It stresses me out. I mean, I'm one of those people, I'm a prepper. I'm looking at depositions 2 weeks out, like, okay, I have all of these things ready. Let me just kind of go through my questions. Let me think about it. And then when I go in there, shit hits the fan. I've already thought about what's going to happen in the situation.
Well, sometimes you don't have 2 weeks, Mike. Sometimes you just got to make it happen, man. And so you can prepare as much as you want to, but the thing about trial practice and the thing about these depositions is live action, baby. That's what makes it fun.
Fair.
So, okay, Mike, you want to see what I did in these liability depots? Okay, so look, guys, we saw that it's a construction case against a construction company. I work with Abraham Watkins. I think you can see that's up on the screen here, but let me give a little predicate. Some key players in this construction project. Obviously, you've got the construction company that we went after. That's the general contractor, the prime contractor, who's in control of the job site and overseeing the work and fundamentally responsible for the conditions in the field. It's a TxDOT contract. And so the actual owner and the people doing the oversight and some of the regulatory implications and some of the rules that apply come from TxDOT. So TxDOT is the ultimate authority in this case. Okay. And so I was inevitably going to have to take some TxDOT depositions. Right. And it's always a decision. I mean, who do you go after in any individual case? I mean, who are your defendants going to be? Right. Going after the state or the city isn't always a great call, because you're dealing with cats. It can cause some problems. So we made the decision to focus, and this is an important point for young lawyers as well, is to focus our attention on just the construction company, because we felt that they were the ones that were responsible for acting do what they were supposed to do. Now, the construction company pointed the finger at one of its subcontractors.
Shocker. Okay.
Go figure. Yeah. It wasn't our fault. It was somebody else. Yeah. Even though it's their road and they're the ones doing the daily and nightly inspections, you know what's out.
They're always going to point the finger.
Should have been somebody else who put that fence up and who put the safety there properly. But what that does sometimes is it creates an opportunity, because then you can you can point the fire back and forth between the two now defendants if you bring somebody else in. So I brought this responsible third party in the suit. I named them the defendant. I said, hey, these people say you done wrong on this road. You're the one that messed this up. You're the one that didn't put the safety, the protections back up that should have been there. Why'd you do that? Okay. Yeah. And so I leveraged that posture to get some very good deposition testimony. Now let me start. That's my sort of predicate leading into this. So I'm taking the deposition of the TxDOT project manager. He's given me, because I'm laying out these really small facts that he has to admit to. Right. In this case, it's things like, hey, anytime there's a construction project like this, you got to have what's known as a traffic control plan. traffic control plan's got to lay out how you're going to make safe that roadway for the traveling public.
So when you started on this exhibit, were you looking at the pattern jury charge and what you needed?
I'll be honest, this one, so logistically, when these cases come in, I'm always looking at the charge.
That's the first thing you look at.
Got to.
Yeah.
Got to.
Yeah. You got to know what the jury's ultimately going to write their numbers on.
You got to know what you got to prove.
Yes or no.
Got to know what you got to prove.
Absolutely.
You look at the pattern jury charge, and if you get a sense for where the law is going to be, you also want to take a quick look at the law.
Yeah.
Because I knew what this case entailed, I could look up some law, Chapter 97, because it was a text dot contract was going to come into play. Yeah. And so I could do some initial research, even though there isn't a huge volume of law on the issue,
right?
To at least guide me as to what the issues were going to be, see where the traps were, and then stay clear of those a little bit.
Right.
So I had a sense. But again, Mike, this wasn't a 2-week prep on this. Like I'm taking 16 depositions in a month. I don't always have 2 weeks to prep for a deposition, even in a massive case like this. And so I
think my Apple Watch is freaked out, but whatever.
What I do though is I lay out all these minor, what I call the minor premises, the minor facts, which lead to the major premise. And I lay those out and I get them to admit to those and commit to those. So I'm good. I'm thinking to myself, well, look, I got all this great testimony, but I'd really like something to seal the deal and put it in a concrete format that I can put into a presentation potentially, or to show the jury in argument, either an opening or a closing argument. Like Scott already said, these people did it wrong.
Right.
How is a defense lawyer going to say in his report that we don't have something? So I'm listening to the answers. I'm getting these answers, and I get to a break, and I build this chart on the fly. What you're looking at right now, I built on the fly. I typed this out. I put it in gray. I said, hey, look, man, these are going to be some questions I'm going to ask you. I already know I got your testimony on this. I want to be real clear about what you said and what your answers are. I asked them questions. Conditions like the one involved in this accident pose a great risk of harm to the traveling public. You agree? Agree. Are I true there? Yes, sir. Right, true. All right, sir, right, true. Contractors in heavy civil construction are aware of the great risk of harm to the traveling public posed by conditions. I'm getting gross. Do you agree with that statement? I agree. True. I get through all of these, and I go to the end. I say, sir, can I sign your name to it? He says, yeah, you can sign it. Sign it. Zip 3040 deposition. Boom, it's in the record. Unescapable. Nothing to do about it. So I do it once. The one thing I leave out on this one, because it's text dot, and I really don't know what this guy's going to say. Look, he's adverse to me, frankly.
Yeah.
Now, there's no objection to leading. If there'd been leading objections, I would have had to done something a little bit differently.
Right.
But he was represented by independent counsel. There was no leading objections. I was able to go through and ask these questions the way I wanted to.
And they weren't a defendant in the lawsuit.
They were not a defendant in the lawsuit.
Yeah. So they're like,
so text dot was not a defendant.
Yeah.
But again, I was permitted. There was no leading objections, and I went through and I asked questions the way I wanted to.
Right.
Had defense counsel objected to leading, I might have modified my questions a little bit and then cleaned it up just to be very clear about what the testimony was. And I think I would have gotten away with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Just takes longer.
It just takes a lot longer. So after that, I come in, and again, so the one thing I don't do, you notice here, there's no numbers.
Right.
I don't ask them, hey, what do you think an appropriate damage award might be or a punitive damage award might be, even though I've established the basic predicate, the basic testimony to get gross negligence from the text dot project manager, the man with his feet on the ground, who's ultimately in control of this project. But they pointed the finger at the subcontractor. So the subcontractor comes in and I say, hey, man, what are you doing here? He goes, well, I don't know. You sued me. I'm like, yeah, well, I guess I did sue you, but hey, let me show you why. And so I start that deposition with a video cut of a deposition of the defendant construction company saying, oh, it was the other subcontractor that pulled this stuff down and never should have done that. It was an unsafe condition.
Right.
Mr. Subcontractor, did you just see what the other people said about you? I did. That's a damn lie. Well, tell us all about how it's a damn lie. And he goes through and he lays out, and I got no problem with it because I got no evidence that shows that he's anywhere near, or his company's anywhere near the condition to kill my client. Mm-hmm. So he's riled up. And I've used this to my benefit.
Let me tell you about those moments.
mind you, I am leading the shit out of this guy.
Yeah.
He's a defendant in this case.
And you can.
The defense lawyer goes, objection leading. I go, Mr. Defense Lawyer, he's been practicing for 40 years. He's a defendant. I'm going to lead him all I want. He goes, defense lawyer says, he doesn't seem like much of a defendant in this case, did he? I'm like, you shouldn't have pointed the finger at him, man.
Bad call.
So we go through it. I do the same thing, and this guy spin it out. He's fantastic. I qualify him as an expert. I'm like, where'd you go to school? I went to this wonderful school in the SEC. I'm like, not very many good schools in the SEC, but okay. And he goes, I'm like,
I won't take that personal, but all right.
He goes, well, and I'm like, well, what did you take at school? He's like, I took construction project management. I'm like, you did? Okay, that's great. Just construction project management for a job just like this one? Job just like this one. You ever work a TxDOT job? I've worked tons of TxDOT jobs. Do you ever design a traffic control plan? I have. Have you worked for construction companies as big as the one that's the defendant in this case? Certainly have. Okay. You know what we're talking about here? I do. So at that point, I'm like, well, great. I'm going to start getting opinion testimony from you, even though you don't know what's going out, even though you don't know what was happening out there on that roadway. And he did. He had quite a bit of personal knowledge from being out there for a certain amount of time and watching these guys do their work. But again, I'm asking for some opinion here, and I need to establish if you do it. Well, once I got that, I go through my chart. Now, at this point, my chart's already pre-made, right? Because I know I got it in my back pocket.
Yeah.
This is a week down the line, and I'm thinking, I get this TxDOT. This is going to be great. I get the same answers, but this guy he's heated. I mean, this guy's pissed. He's raging. So he's giving me wonderful answers, and I'm like, I take a break, and I give him an opportunity to change anything he wants. Which is, I've already walked this in.
You've walked through most of this already.
I've already gone through most of this already.
Okay.
This isn't all, people need to know who are seeing this. Not all this is I did this live. I'm typing some of this live with him.
Okay.
So each one of these blocks aren't pre-written. I'm not just writing in true. Some of this I'm actually writing in with him. And so if you look there on the right-hand side, the very last question, I give him an opportunity to change some of this testimony. I go back. I'm like, look, man, I don't want to trap you in any of this. I'm not here to do that. You're going to get a free and fair opportunity to say, hey, look, I've changed my mind. I want to look at more evidence, whatever you want. I want to give you that opportunity.
Right.
I don't want to change a word he says. Okay. Well, I pull up Google at this point. Here in Texas, you're allowed to look at about 6 or 7 different factors, which are the factors that come into how much a jury should put a number on a company to punish them for their conduct. I want you to look at those factors. He looks at them. I go, what do you think? $1 billion? Not $1 billion.
He says no to $1 billion.
Not $1 billion? Shocked that she said no to $1 billion. But he looks and he thinks for a minute. Let's say $100 million.
$100 million.
I say, sir, can I put $100 million down on this chart? I said, you can. And so this chart gets a whole other section to it. It says, in my opinion, based on my knowledge, skill, and experience, as well as the facts that's how you know I've typed it myself, that I've been provided, and my understanding of this incident, everything else about it, $100 million. And his name, project manager for the subcontract. Exhibit 6 to do his deposition.
So defense counsel is like...
Defense counsel wasn't defense counsel in this case much longer. That's how that worked out.
The reporting after that was just like, damn it.
It was wild. It was wild. It was a great scene. But the point for our listeners, I think, is here's another opportunity to be creative. You can write out your charge and just think about this. I mean, look, if they're lay witnesses, I mean, then you got to get, basically factual testimony or opinion testimony within the conception or perception of the lay witness. But go ahead and chart it out.
Yeah.
Make it tangible.
Yeah.
And if you can get something more than that, put a chart to it and do whatever you want, frankly. I mean, all you're doing is creating an opportunity for yourself to put something on the record or in the record that then that company has to go and report up the line and do something with. So in this case, I got a very experienced, very knowledgeable construction project manager who actually worked on that project to say that defendant construction company should put a jury should put $100 million in the punitive damage number on them.
So you had someone who you thought coming into it was going to be a pain and ended up being a gift.
I didn't see a single thing in the record. And mind you, I scoured that damn record. I mean, I knew every page in it. I knew everything about the regulations. I knew everything about the construction project. I didn't see an invoice. I didn't see anything. And I couldn't think to myself, what is it that why is he here?
Right.
And so I took the opportunity very early on posture the deposition in a way that, hey, there's an antagonist here. It's not you.
Right.
It's not me. It's a construction company that's not taking responsibility for its actions.
And he's pointing it everywhere else.
Everybody else but me. Everybody else but themselves, failing to take responsibility.
So liability sealed at that point after that one.
I felt pretty good about liability.
Yeah, you weren't worried about that anymore.
So, and just so people are aware of the way that I did this too, is I didn't run out and in a lot of these cases where you've got a corporate defendant is you go take a corporate representative pretty early on to kind of just figure out what the scope of information is.
It's a discovery depot for discovery depot.
Super discovery depot. There was enough information available kind of early on that I knew who some of the players were. So the depositions, like the initial liability depositions were regional safety manager, direct to the VP of operations, the highest ranking member of the company. I just named him and took his depot. I just said, I'm just going to take it. Go and took it. It was incredible. It was a great depot, really good depot. Phenomenal. And then the next one was the project engineer who had written the sort of post-incident report, and everything that I read was responsible for the traffic control on that roadway. So those were like the three primary big depots. I took another superintendent depot, and then we started getting into TxDOT, the independent project manager, and then some other kind of peripheral, eyewitnesses and some other people as well.
Yeah.
But that was the sort of layout for that. Because I knew where I wanted to go, and because I knew those were the people that were going to have both personal knowledge and be able to speak effectively on behalf of the corporation, even though they weren't noticed that way, I knew I could go get them and just get after it, and then reserve the ability, if I wanted to go take a corporate rep after the fact. Who's the corporate rep going to be after I take the VP, the regional safety manager, and the project engineer for the product, or for the project rather? I mean, it's probably going to be one of those three people anyway.
Yeah.
And what are they going to say? What are they going to do?
And they didn't object to this at any point in time.
What are they going to object to? I mean, I have every right to take any depositions in any order I want.
I mean, fair, but once you start asking questions, you're not going to say you need the corporate rep for that. You just talk about the fact that you know.
Okay, so here's the scenario. Hey, Mr. So-and-so, you're the VP of operations. Do you not know about the safety standards? Do you not know about the contract that you all signed? Do you not know about the regulations that are applicable to you under this contract? You do know that, right? Because if you didn't, that'd be freaking crazy. Okay, so so let's talk about it.
Fair. All right.
I mean, it gets pretty easy at that point. You're the regional safety manager.
I guess it just seems unfair that you're able to do this and then say, all right, I want the corporate rep as well. Let me get another 6 hours on this motherfucker.
Hey, man, that's how it works, man. Look, I don't make the rules, man. I just play mine. I play hard.
All right. Liability's in the bag now, right? I mean, look, you've got enough at trial that the jury at this point is probably going to hate this construction company.
Well, hey, just before you say liabilities in the bag, man, like the scenario here is, and y'all saw it. I mean, you got a guy, he's a great guy, but he's riding through a construction zone at night. Passed a whole bunch of barrels.
Right.
Passed the sidewalk close sign.
Yeah.
Popped up onto a sidewalk. And it ain't for him, sort of the thing that ended up taking his life. So there was, and he was on a cell phone.
Oh, what?
He was talking on his cell phone at the time. And we have the deposition, like literally, he was on his phone all the way into the condition, all the way up to the point. Which the way that I wanted to take that was, I thought it was going to be very powerful testimony for us, in fact, because I thought that he was doing everything appropriately. And I didn't think there was anything inherently wrong with riding while using hands-free and the headphones on.
Right.
And then we had the very lady who heard his last bit. It was incredible testimony as well. Who was another good friend of his. So that day, again, he's a Houston Rockets scout.
Right.
The same day Daryl Morey announced it. So they were all talking. I mean, there was a lot of back and forth between members of the organization. Hey, what's going on? Everybody's calling my client because he was the 26-year member of the Houston Rockets who'd been through every different regime that they had. And so one of the members of the staff. And so we had this wonderful, sweet and kind and genuine member of the Houston Rockets, very nice woman who was part of their staff. She just said, told me that he was. He told me that he stopped, and, that he was getting ready to ride and riding, and all of a sudden I just heard a sound. Line cut after it. And so we had that. But as far as liability being in the bag, let's talk.
You don't know if the jury's going to get through all that.
Well, I just don't know.
Yeah.
Right. He's in a construction zone. He's riding at night.
Yeah.
He's going past barrels. He's going past a sidewalk close sign, and he's on his phone.
I don't think the cell phone issue is too bad, right? You're on a bike, hands-free.
I mean, look, I don't think I've been on this podcast before, and I don't think there's any word. I don't think there's any bad facts, man. I really don't. I mean, I think, look, if your people are riding, your people are just, and they're acting reasonably and appropriately for the most part, I think you figure out a way to make it all make sense. And I think it all made sense in this case.
But it's terrifying going up there. You're like, hey, there's a lot of problems here, right?
It's definitely an issue that you got to deal with. And so we needed to figure out a way to deal with it. And that's why those depositions were so important.
Yeah.
On the liability side, the reason why it was important, I was going to explain this to the jury if I'd been given that opportunity, was that the reason that traffic control, the design of it, and the proper installation of the right devices to communicate and affirmatively provide the assurance and guidance that we need when we move through an area that is confusing.
Right.
Okay. So they didn't do that. And so he was never afforded the opportunity. He was never warned. And that is a system failure, not a human failure. That is a failure on the part of a construction company with 60 years of expertise and experience, who knew to follow appropriate regulations, didn't do that. And they want to point the finger at a man who did everything.
Yeah.
And so that was an argument I felt pretty comfortable with going up on those people. That's why I think we were able to settle the case.
So you took the LA Lakers head coach's deposition?
Well, yeah, I did.
Tell me about that one.
Well, I was lucky.
That's not a normal depo, is it?
It felt pretty normal, man.
It felt normal?
I honestly, it didn't. It felt good. It felt right. I felt like I knew. There was nothing about it that felt weird. There's nothing about it that felt extra. I want to show y'all just maybe the sort of slide that I set up that maybe put some context as to why I felt so good about it and why I felt so clean. I had an opportunity to go to Mark Lanier's conference or seminar rather, maybe 2 or 3 weeks before this deposition. And for those of you who haven't had an opportunity to see what Mark does or see him in his Vioxx cases or out cases or whatever else,
you definitely should go. He talks logistics 100%. He tells you down to what you should buy, for like your trials. So I would absolutely at least go one.
And the guy likes visuals more than like, I don't know, Hallmark or somebody or Instagram. Like the guy's all pictures, man.
Oh, he's all about it.
And he knows the cognitive science better than anybody else. And so he says, part of what he really touts is you should, and the way he does it is he actually draws these things out physically. He draws them out. He has like a document camera that he sets up and does it. He does it with all
Pivo.
IPEVO.
I have one in my office.
I bought one. I haven't used it yet, but I will. And so he loves PowerPoint as well. And so I thought to myself, well, shoot, I'm taking the depo of the LA Lakers head coach, which is insane in and of itself. But so what? I'm a trial lawyer. This is what I do.
Right.
And I thought, I'll set up a PowerPoint and see how it goes. So I'd never done this before. Not once in my career I've never really used PowerPoint, frankly.
Okay.
So I just thought, this seems like the right opportunity for this, because I needed something with the visual backing. And I knew that a visual was going to be a very powerful force in the telling of this story and the telling of this witness story of his very good friend, very, very good friend.
Yeah.
And so I thought, look, I'll try and do it. And so, so the first thing we've got up here is this roadmap, and I can play y'all some of the deposition, but I thought I'd show you the PowerPoint.
Okay. So show me this PowerPoint, man. Like, you learned this, like, how long before did you actually learn Microsoft PowerPoint, which makes me very worried?
Maybe like, I was like learning as I did it. I don't know what to tell you about. Right?
You're like, how do I make this like the actual slideshow?
Dude, I was Googling. You saw me in here today. I'm like, dude, I don't know how to make it on presenter view or like slideshow view. I don't know. I was Googling like every slide. I'd be Googling, how do I find this? And then I'd like Google the image. I'm like, how do I find this image? And then dude, it was wild. But and mind you, I have no outline either for this deposition.
Well, yeah, I don't think there's been a previous deposition of the LA Lakers head coach.
I have no outline. Now I've taken these damages depos and I have a general sense of where I'm going to go, but there's no written outline for me to follow. So if this PowerPoint all of a sudden doesn't work, I don't know where I'm going with this thing. I mean, if you want to see freaking hot garbage, man, I mean, that's what it might have turned into. But No risk, no risk it, no biscuit. Bruce Arians, let's go. So this is the PowerPoint. You start off with a roadmap. That's one of Lanier's big points.
Yeah.
And I basically I laid it out, the power of threes. We all know it kind of from, a bunch of different sources, but I wanted to go through the witness's background and then talk about the NBA and then his reflections of his friend.
So you literally put a road for the roadmap.
Literally. I'm very literal. I'm not very figurative. I'm not great with that. Lanier's much better. It served dual purposes, and I think the witness first thought when I pulled it up, he was like, "Is that the road that BJ was on, or like my client was on?"
Jesus.
But anyway, the point is to show a road and show a roadmap, and that's about as metaphorical as I get. So there's the coach. That's the initial slide to open up the background. You'll see when I play the Depo, and I'll roll through some cuts. But I started off with kind of where you are, because primacy and recency are very important. On the primacy point, you want to start off with what is the most important thing? Who is this guy and why does he matter?
Right.
I didn't want to start at the very beginning. I wanted to go, let's talk about who you are right now first.
Right.
And so first off, you were the head coach of the LA freaking Lakers. That's point number one. And then I interspliced with this image a video of his press conference. Okay. So I played that, and we'll see that. And I'll talk about how I set this up in a minute. We go back to his basically his roots. Really cool picture. The guy shattered the freaking backboard.
Yeah.
Incredible. We go in through his some of his NBA stuff. I just kind of softball his career a little bit, some of the charity work he did. This was a connection through Basketball Without Borders with my client, where my client was extremely influential in developing basketball in Africa and actually turning it into a professional league there, the Basketball Africa League. It was incredible. Yeah, incredible stuff. And I even animated some of these here. So we went through his assistant coaching chops. The guy loved the picture. Here's the other point for why these visuals are great, even for some of these witnesses, especially when there's pictures of the witness. The rapport with the witness is so strong.
Oh, yeah.
They're talking about themselves. They're seeing themselves. They know that you've done a little bit of work. They're engaged. You're engaged.
And then again, as we're sitting here and you show me this, not all of the slides, but some of the slides will work, but I'm still sucked in. And I'm like, you're just narrating everything about this guy. I'm like, oh man, that's pretty cool. This is a good dude.
Great dude.
Yeah.
Great dude. And so we get back to present day, coach. You're the head coach of the LA freaking Lakers. Well, now we got to talk about the NBA. So then we get into this whole NBA phase. And what am I trying to get at here? I'm talking about the course of the NBA, what matters in the NBA for people looking for positions, and then what the potential is on his staff and for BJ. My client's name is BJ.
Yeah.
My client through the NBA. These are pretty open-ended slides.
Right.
But really what this gets to is, how do you pick your staff? Because what I wanted this witness to establish was, where did BJ fit?
Right.
And I hit this slide.
And for viewers on the podcast, it's the plaintiff in this case. That's why BJ. Okay.
And you've seen the video, Mike. I mean, the reaction.
Yeah, you made the LA Lakers coach almost cry. I mean, I actually cry. He was just holding it back the whole time.
It was incredible. It was incredible because he started talking about how he wanted to have his friend be a part of his staff because his friend was a man with 26 years of unmatched experience across the NBA. I then transitioned to this picture in the middle of that statement, and he stopped himself and he just tried to keep himself together. And then he gave just incredible testimony about a 33-minute phone call between himself and my client, this man, 4 days before his accident,
right,
where this head coach, who is now the head coach of the Lakers, had not gotten the LA, or had thought he had thought that he had a really good interview with the LA Clippers, and talked about the excitement between the two of them, and then this accident. And it was the most incredible testimony that I've ever gotten, and it was being just so immaculately captured by virtue of a PowerPoint, by virtue of the Zoom system. And that's for people out there that are watching as to how to use the technique. That's the power of having these visuals. That's the thing you can really leverage when you're on Zoom, because you can work in different mediums. You can work in video. You can work in an Depos. You can work in these images, and the witness is so engaged.
The ability to use visual with the Zoom world now is so easy that it's like borderline malpractice not to use it.
When you know what the cognitive sciences are, and then you have at your disposal the technology to really effectively control the presentation, you're like, it's all HBO. It's all HBO and Netflix. I mean, you can present things in such a compelling and concise fashion. The way that the deposition was done in a one take, it's almost like True Detective style with that one take long shot. It's 40 minutes, start, stop. So if I was going to play that for the jury, there was one objection. There's no way it would have been sustained.
Right.
So it was a start and stop 40-minute depo with the head coach of the LA Lakers. And so we get into some of the LA Lakers stuff. Part of the pushback on BJ was his age and the fact that he'd never had a coaching position before.
65, right?
Yeah, he's 65 at the time he passed. So I said, well, hey, are there guys who are still working as consultants and doing stuff in the NBA?
He said into their 70s.
Above the age of 70.
Yeah.
He said, well, yeah, I mean, Jerry West is in his 80s. And, mind you, I didn't plan any of this. This is the beauty of this too, is they'll find, if they're not in sync, if the witness who you are taking the deposition, if the opponent is not in sync with the images, that's fine.
Yeah.
You just hang on an image or you black out an image, and then you allow them to talk, and then you come back to it. Because you can always redirect, just like you would in a deposition, in any ordinary deposition or at trial, to where you want to go.
Yeah.
But it just so happened that he said, well, I know of a coach in Golden State who is in his 70s or 74, 75 right now. Click. Yeah, I know him too. Which guy are we looking at here? That's the guy right there with the glasses on. Go figure. He's not too old to coach up Steph Curry? No. You know what I mean? Anybody else who's coaching in the NBA is a head coach in their 70s? Great confidence. And then, we have an opportunity at the end of this thing, like I said, to go through some of these reflections and then talk about the man himself. And we have a real opportunity, again, to put real flesh and real texture and really show the loss to a family, his 92-year-old mother, his son, a man that always made it home for Christmas in Virginia. It's just awesome. It's just awesome. So I'll show you, actually show you kind of how it worked a little bit. I'm not going to play the sound out of respect to the coach, but I do think it's helpful. And we want to help some of these young lawyers to see what it looks like in practice. So this is the 40-minute cut, as y'all can see, 40 minutes. You see that?
40 minutes and 24 seconds.
40 minutes, 24 seconds. So just quickly, I know we talked about it, but you do lay a predicate. That's how I set this up. I said, first of all, who are you? Understand you're on the road.
Right.
My name is, Darvin Ham. I'm the head coach of the Lakers. Yes, I understand I'm on the road. Yeah. All right, I got 2 exhibits that I'm going to use during the course of this deposition. One is going to be a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to attach that as exhibit 1 of this deposition. Number 2 is going to be a video produced by the LA Lakers. Okay. I also want to know, Mr. Ham, about your background in the NBA before we really start. Where'd you start? Where'd you finish? What'd you do? All right. Knowledge, skill, and experience in the NBA. Yeah, absolutely. You agree with me? That's sort of specialized industry, and you got experience in this industry. Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Qualify him as an expert. Yep. If you're going to give me opinion testimony, okay, I want you to give it to more likely than not. Can you do that? Yes, sir. You have my agreement. If it's less than that, you're going to tell me. Yes, I will. All right. Let's get to the meat of this thing from the top. And that's where that's what we're watching now, from the top. And so I just run it. And so he gives me his name. We get into some of this stuff. And then I'm just going to kind of run through it, but we go through it with them slide by slide.
Yeah. Roadmap's already up in a minute 20.
Yep. We get into how he's the head coach. And then I launch into a video, which I'll play for you guys just a little bit. But I play this video then, and I allow him to talk while the video is actually running in the background. And it's incredible because he's talking about how the moment when he becomes the head coach of the LA Lakers is actually bittersweet, because his friend that he's known since 1995 isn't with him to enjoy the experience and to go on that ride with him.
And it's literally him becoming the head coach of the LA Lakers.
Him being announced.
Okay.
And so just as we continue to run through this, I'll say that what I did here is I had him prove up that video as well as a business record, just in case it was an issue.
Right.
I found a video that was actually produced by the LA Lakers because I wanted to make sure that I had somebody that could come in and prove it up as a business record. So he did that. Just in case there was any sort of issue whatsoever about, having it, even though it's not necessarily coming into evidence, it doesn't need to be admissible. It's just demonstrative use for purposes of his testimony, and it was assistive.
Right.
Why not just dot your I's and cross your T's?
Yeah.
So here's Darvin talking about how he smashed the backboard and caused all kinds of damage, and talking about his NBA career. Just a great guy, phenomenal guy. And so we let him run. Like, it's not like it's pop, 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 because sometimes he wants to talk. He wants to talk about his stories in the NBA. He wants to talk about what he was doing. He wants to talk about all kinds of stuff. So you got to let him talk a little bit. You let him kind of run through it. And then they're so thrilled. The witness is so thrilled to talk about their own experiences and to share that with people. That's what's so wonderful when you have these visuals.
Right.
And then at this point, this is what we're talking about when he gets into the conversation. And he's talking about, what is the course and what is the practice of picking a coach in the NBA. I don't want to say he did this. I want to show you guys so that, you can really see the effect of what a visual will do even to your opponent. So he's talking about how here, there's really 3 principal things that you do when you're picking, when you're going in for a head coaching interview. You want to define your style of play. You want to identify players who are going to fit that style of play. And then number 3 thing is you want to know who your coaching staff is going to be. Mm-hmm. And so he's talking about that right here. And as he's about to get into who his coaching staff is going to be, he starts talking about how, I was going to have BJ on that staff. He sees it, stops, dead stop.
And that's how long the stop was, by the way, for the viewers on the podcast.
And so I don't want to, glorify that, but I think it's very important that people are able to understand the effectiveness of these techniques and kind of how they can help and assist you, because it helped the witness to tell the story of his friend.
Yeah.
And it allowed him to communicate the emotion that he had and the feeling that he had and the impact of the man on him to the jury, the people that needed to understand that message.
Yeah. And, it used the term glorify that fact. What you did is you not only helped your case, helped your client's case, right? But you allowed the opponent in the situation to actually feel what he's trying to convey about the person he lost. So, no, man, that was good. That was real good. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah. No, so that was huge. And at that point, really, the case took a turn, and I think really moved to a position where resolution was the only option.
Because now you've made that mark. You said, look, he's not just a scout. I have shown you who this person is, right?
Yeah. It's not speculative anymore.
No, it's definitely not only within the realms of possibility, but it's the realms of, I don't know. It's going to happen. It's going to be very likely to have a huge verdict on this.
And so part of the reason why we also wanted to get a number of individuals in the league, and what we're talking about is executives, we're talking about coaches, we're talking about players, and we're talking about agents, other people who are in the industry. Right? All of them, the synthesis of that information from different positions. Some people that didn't even actually work directly within the sphere of BJ Johnson and my client, right? Is to mesh that all together and show exactly what you're saying.
Right.
This is the reality of this situation. All of those blocks are there. That whole puzzle is there, and this is a completely filled in, clear, and convincing picture for you. One other point to make is that the witnesses were also useful because we did allow them to bootstrap other witnesses. So Coach Ham, who is now coach of the Lakers, he wasn't coach of the Lakers when this started.
Right.
He was announced during actually a deposition of one of my experts. Yes. So I took 2 experts. Well, I presented 2 experts that day. It was my, I think it was my human factors expert and my bicycle safety expert. And during the course of that deposition, ESPN came out, and I think during a break, I saw it. And I went back there and I put my phone down on the table because of that. But the LA Lakers not the new head coach, Darvin Ham. And so what we had done before that, to kind of roll it back a little bit, is I'd ask these people, well, hey, do y'all know who Darvin Ham is? Because Darvin was the one that said, look, if I ever get a head coaching job, this guy was going to get my staff.
Right.
And to a man, they all said as well, Coach Ham, who had like 10 official head coaching interviews at this point,
right,
was the guy who was going to get a head coaching job. But it was still sort of out there. But I at least had some credibility. Like Coach Ham is not just the lead assistant for the Milwaukee Bucks, but he's someone who was on the precipice, on the cusp of being in this position where he would have hired Johnson. Just so happens, about 2 months before trial, I hired the head coach of the Lakers.
So you had 2 options going into this case. Autonomous with a basic plan, looking at maybe $2 million, or look at a very specialized industry and say, in a specialized industry, you need to know what an executive will look at for a coach, what a coach will look at for a coach, what a player will look at for a coach. What am I missing here? Agents.
Yeah.
And then you went and said, I'm just going to take all those depositions and prove that up.
Exactly. And the 3 different sort of damage model that I created was he had a job for life. That is my client, the plaintiff who passed, had a job for life with the Rockets as a scout.
Right.
That didn't necessarily reflect his position, his experience, his relationships in the NBA.
It didn't reflect him.
Didn't reflect. Well, it's not fair to say that because he was a person who loved the scout and loved his position and wouldn't have stayed with the Rockets for 26 years had he not. Like he truly did. But I think that he was at a position also where he wanted to explore other opportunities, and one of those was definitely going to be coaching. But I had to capture that. He was also an agent earlier on in his life, and he had the most lucrative possible connections and relationships you could have in a relationship-driven industry. Right. So
he was kind of doing the scouting because he just liked scouting.
He just loved scouting. He just loved scouting. But he always had agents come up to him, and this is why I took a bunch of agent depositions and got a bunch of statements from him saying we wanted this guy, we wanted him to be part of our agencies. We wanted, if he was an independent agent, he would have just absolutely destroyed it. Because talking about a guy who basically laid the foundations for basketball in Africa.
Yeah,
you're talking about, and guys have come out in the 90s and in the early 2000s, but the talent coming out of Africa now, Joel Embiid, Giannis. I mean, there's tons of guys, just so many guys, and there's so much more talent coming. And he basically would have been the funnel, the channel, the prism through which a lot of that talent would have come, which positioned him perfectly. One more thing, I used another chart, if I can pull it up and find it quickly, but one of the things that I did, and I don't know how long we're running, but I'm happy to go as long as you want to come back or whatever. One of the things I did in my depositions, even of the people that I was presenting on the agent side, was to make those charts and say, what are the qualities of a good agent? And I would have a chart. I would write it down, like relationships, magnetism, ability to identify talent. And we would go through these different things. And I would say, hey, well, you just identify these qualities. I don't use the phrase, do you have an opinion? Because it sounds too stilted.
Yeah.
Do you think that BJ had those qualities? Do you think that my client had those qualities?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely the best. So we'd write that in. I'd write that in that chart. So I'd have that as well. And so even if I just wanted to show it and have that going coextensive with my taking of the deposition for the jurors, there would be another reference. It would be a writing. So the juries can sit there and they can write that down in the jury boxes they're watching as well. And so I did that with my agent witness, a man named Andre Buck, who represents BJ Tucker. And we went through those qualities. We went through the agent certifications and what was required to certify an agent, whether BJ could do that. So it was just a checklist.
Yeah.
You could do that, check. You could do that, check. You could do that, check. Any issue here? No, check. Okay, so BJ could have been an agent, hands down, no questions asked. Absolutely. I mean, that's not even an opinion. That's a fact.
Yeah.
Fact. Okay. Let's go through the next stuff. You know what I mean? And so, if your job is to persuade, you need to find these techniques, these visuals, these charts, these checklists. And I think when you're a young lawyer, or the document camera and then doing the documents, I think when you're a young lawyer, and for the young lawyers listening, that's an opportunity for us to come in and go, hey, for the people that we're working with who are dinosaurs with gray hairs who don't have these skills, go, hey, look, I'll take this one. I can do something pretty decent with this one. I can show you how to do it. I will do it. And then we won't have to come back and we won't have to call these witnesses to come live because we know that's a hassle. We know that's really hard. And the insurance companies and the defense lawyers know that too.
And they're better on it.
They're betting on it, but I'm going to give you a canned 40-minute perfect trial deposition.
Put everything into it. We go. Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that we can do, and that's why it's really cool. It's really cool we can do now. And you can do that live too, by the way. I mean, there's no reason that you can't bring in your document camera. There's no reason you can't bring in an iPad. There's no reason.
I use Depos like all the time on a lot of expert depos. I use it probably like half my deposition. I like it because I'm a paper guy, but I still want to show something, and I always like picture in picture because I know juries just when they hear words and that's it, gone.
Tune it out. Yeah, it is not something to keep them locked in the way they need to. So are you doing that on Zoom?
Yeah.
What about when you go live?
Yeah, done it in trial 3 times.
Oh yeah, in trial for sure. Because you can lock it into the camera and do
Boom.
it. Yeah.
And I'm telling you right now, they're not looking at me. They are absolutely looking at the screen every single time. And so I'm drawing stuff. The only problem I have is I'm not very good at drawing.
Dude, you got to learn it, man.
I know.
That's where you go on YouTube and you start YouTube and sketch videos. That's what I do, man. Like 100%.
Serious?
Oh, 100%. I've got a whole playlist pinned of like YouTube sketch videos so that I can get good like Mark Lanier to get good on these sketches. Because why not? It makes you an absolute threat. My dad told me, my dad's a 30-year trial lawyer where I'm from. He's a defense lawyer.
Against them, I guess.
Yeah, it is what it is. But I had a case, I had a deposition the other day with a senior defense lawyer. The guy was all like, I like good hair. You look like James Bond, like a defense lawyer. My dad's 340 pounds and bald, and that's what a defense lawyer looks like. But But he told me, man, if you do anything, if I can tell you one thing, just don't be boring.
Yeah.
Just don't be boring. Doesn't help your case. It doesn't help the jury. Nobody appreciates it. Don't be boring.
Even if you're the most legally sound, doesn't resonate, not going to get you anywhere.
Even the most clinical of the practitioners that we have, and you and I know a guy who's here in Houston who's had a lot of success recently, represented baseball players and got a big break in town and went down to the Valley and got another big one. But even he, who represents himself as being a clinician and not necessarily so, even he certainly incorporates these visuals, these concepts, because he understands the efficacy, the power, the persuasive force of these things. It's you don't do them, I just think you're missing out on a big opportunity.
Last thing before I let our viewers go on this one, you gave me an example of something that I really like. I just want you to put it out there. To basketball. So yeah, this is sort of, you want to create these really good analogies and visual representations of ideas. And so in this case, we talked about traffic control and the devices that need to be out there or that should have been out there in order to make it safe for the traveling public. And my idea, had I been given the opportunity, taken from me, if I had gotten a chance to go try this case, is I had ordered 2 basketballs. I probably even have the photos in there on my phone because I sent them to somebody. But I had 2 Wilson basketballs. So there's a Wilson basketball and they had the NBA logo on them. And what I was going to do is I was going to put them in containers. So there's going to be a bit of a deal. I was going to pull out one and it's going to be a perfect, just ordinary basketball. Look at this basketball. And I was going to say, it's got all the components of a basketball and all the components that you need to have this thing do exactly what you need to do. It's got the shape, it's got the leather, it's got the creases and lines, it's embossed with the logo. And it's simple. I was going to bounce the ball and go, this basketball works. I was going to reach into another bucket that had other basketballs, but pull it out. I was going to look at this basketball and it's got the same components. It's got the leather, it's got the groove, it's embossing. This basketball's flat. And it was going to be visually and very apparent that this basketball is flat. Yeah.
And I was going to try and bounce that basketball. that basketball doesn't work. Just like the traffic control out there on that roadway didn't make safe for my client or for any other the traveling public that sits in that.
Now that is a good opening.
That's all I got, man. There's some other fun stuff on this case, by the way, that we can go to if you want to. But I appreciate the opportunity to come here on a great podcast, man. And I hope that we give something that shows some new techniques and perspectives to some of the young lawyers out there. And I'm just very happy that we could do right by this family and a very great man who has made a huge impact in the world of basketball and his community. And real tragedy. Very proud to have had the opportunity to work on this case, and thankful to work with Benny Augusto at Abraham Watkins, who's a great mentor to me. I'm very thankful and happy that we could get this done for the family.
Absolutely, man. And hey, look, I appreciate you coming on again. I think I told you the first time around, I like how you get very creative with your trials. But now I got to say, I really like the creative depos, man. Really do. I think that that's the way to go from here on out. I think it's been around for a while, but now it's just no excuse not to do something visual in every single one of your depots. And for the young lawyers out there, probably doing like a car wreck depot, a defendant car wreck depot, and instead of thinking I'm going to go through this, I'm going to try to proof up this, that's fine, but make it visually creative and figure out ways to do that, whatever that takes. And think about at trial what you want to show to keep the jury engaged. Well, I appreciate it, man.